important board initiatives by a few of our board task forces. Let's see if I can get this to work. Zane was able to work the clicker, but I apparently pointed. Where should?
Oh, the projector's up there.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay. Oh, at that. Okay. I'm learning on the job. Okay, so this is our agenda for today. We'll review our covenant. I'll introduce our board, which includes a couple new but very familiar faces. And we'll hear about important task force work being done at UUFR by our Addressing Institutional Racism Task Force, our Strategic Planning Task Force, and our Bylaws Task Force. In the interest of time, let's hold questions until the end. Did it work? Oh. I may. Okay. Our covenant is a reminder to remember each other's worth and dignity in all interactions. And I'll just read through our covenant to remind us all, and you can read along. We, the members of the UUFR, hereby covenant to value what unites us over those things that divide us, to practice patience, listen carefully, and speak our truth with compassion, to hold ourselves accountable for our actions and commitments, and assume good intentions on the part of others, to reflect carefully about the potential results of our words and actions before we express ourselves, to respect and support those we have chosen to lead us, our elected leaders, our called ministers, and our professional staff. And when differences arise, we'll speak directly with kindness and respect to those with whom we disagree and not gossip about others. Let's see if I can do this time. I'm clearly technology challenged. I'm trying to point at the projector. Yay! I'm Michelle McIntosh, your board president. I stepped into this role early this year when Jim Yoakum needed to step down in the middle of his term. This process is outlined in our bylaws. I am so thankful for all of Jim's work over the past 2 years, and also for his important continuing work on our bylaws task force, and we'll hear about more of this from him today. Laura Dupre serves as past president this year, and will continue in this role to fill Jim's vacant past president seat next year. We are grateful for the expertise and institutional memory that Laura brings to this role. Laura also serves on the Strategic Planning Task Force. Mary Kay Fruga is a recent past president of UUFR's board who graciously stepped up to fill the vacant seat left by Jim through the end of June. Our bylaws do not allow replacement of an executive team member without a full congregational vote, which is why she serves as our third director at large. Mary Kay also serves on the Bylaws Task Force. Brian Crouch serves as our treasurer and also amazingly commutes from Fayetteville. Bill McMillan is a recent past secretary of UUFR's board who graciously stepped up after Rebecca Marmaduke's resignation in February. We are grateful for all of Rebecca's work over the past 2 years and are also extremely thankful that Bill has joined us on such short notice. Sandy Pierce serves as director at large and also leads our strategic planning task force. And Jessica Gaudreau serves as director at large and is the board liaison to the Addressing Institutional Racism Task Force. Our first presentation will be from our Addressing Institutional Racism Task Force. Jerry Meisner serves as chair, and Dana Maddox will start their presentation.
Famous clicker. Okay. And I think this is the right slide, right? This is the first slide? Okay. All right, good afternoon, everybody.
going to have to bear with me. Usually I'm very comfortable speaking in public, but I don't know if I haven't done it in a couple years because of the pandemic, or this topic is really important to me, but I'm a nervous wreck today. Couldn't remember anything, so I'm pretty much going to be reading it off the paper, even though I practiced multiple times, so just cut me some slack. But I'm Dana Maddox, and I'm a member of the AIR, or Assessing Institutional Racism Board Committee. Our committee was charged with assessing our UUFR written congregational policies and our faith community's current status and making our shared long-term vision a reality. Specifically, our vision of being a welcoming and inclusive community where all who seek a liberal religious home feel that they can belong. The AIR Committee is here today to share the fruits of both our labor and the contributions so many of you have made to this effort through your participation. Our committee coordinated a multi-pronged, systematic congregational assessment resulting in a 100-plus page summary report, including recommendations for next steps, which has been posted for perusal by anyone who loves data as much as I do. The slide, well, let's see if I can get the slide. Is it the right arrow is what I'm supposed to click? There we go. The slide above me shows where to find the report, and there's also a link to it in this week's Chalice newsletter. So while we followed our passions in contributing to this exciting work, we want to stress that the 10 members of the AIR Committee are the smallest part of those committed to anti-racism activism at UUFR. So probably everybody in here is going to stand up, but please stand or raise your hand if you are one of the over 200 individuals who have participated in a Living the Pledge to End Racism workshop and have made a personal commitment to this effort. So, don't put your hands down or sit down. If you are one of the 67 attendees of the rubric assessment sessions that AIR held during this assessment. If you have participated in if you were one of the 79 staff and congregants who completed the IDI assessment. If you participated in One Wake, the Race and Culture Book Club. If you have supported Black farmers through our CSA, helped refugees' families, volunteered for Habitat for Humanity, helped the hungry through Groceries for Seniors, Backpack Buddies, or at the Martin Street Market, contributed to the Blount Street Collections supporting the homeless, have attended a racial justice protest, or have engaged in discussions about fighting racism. All of these activities help support BIPOC communities. So if you sat back down or put your hand down, put your hand back up or stand back up and look around and see how many people have supported these activities that are in our room today. Let's hear some love for all of us anti-racism activists. So thank you. My heart is so full, as I said at the beginning of this, my brain is not working. So this is really exciting work. So we want to provide a little more detail about our work. Let's see if I can get the slide. There we go. Yay. AIR took a three-prong approach to our institutional assessment based on both research of other congregations who are on the same journey we are and recommendations from consultants who have demonstrated expertise in this area. We chose, as part of our initial focus, an assessment of all UUFR written policies and procedures with a focus on identifying racist language or structurally racist policies. This assessment was performed by Dr. Quentin Nichols from Fayetteville State University, who has previous experience in successfully building a multicultural congregation. We also adopted the UUA rubric assessment tool developed by Julica Herman de Fuentes and that she introduced to our congregation at a virtual session last year. It might have been the year before at this point. COVID's got my time sense all off. Year before. In addition, in order to establish a baseline with a well-established tool, we invited congregational leaders, staff, and interested members to complete the IDI, or Intercultural Development Inventory. This assessment tool was developed several decades ago and is used extensively by groups engaged in anti-racism work. So now the data. This is the beautiful stuff you're going to get to see if you look at our report. If charts make you happy like they do me. As you will see when you look at our report, based on both the rubric and IDI results, UUFR is in the middle of our journey to achieve our vision. While it's natural to feel some disappointment or even disbelief that our congregation is not further along on this path, based on the goals of the original civil rights movement, which strived to move society towards racial integration by stressing that skin color doesn't define our humanity, this is actually a logical outcome for us to be at now. However, it is 60 years later, and it is past time for us to move beyond the minimization mindset which Dr. King taught in an era of a highly segregated society of treating everyone the same. We must now move towards actively addressing the power structures in our society that perpetuate both unearned privilege and unfair discrimination based solely on the color of our skin. This is the current task we must embrace if we want to realize our vision of being both a welcoming and inclusive community where all who seek a liberal religious home feel that they can belong, and a meaningful anti-racism force affecting change in our wider community. This is why we on the AIR Committee are passionate about what we are doing. So now a few of our committee members would like to share what inspires them personally to devote their precious time and energy to this task. First, we will hear from Lee Tate, then Diane Irwin, and last but certainly not least, our newest AIR member, Locke Den. You're up, Lee. Oh, I forgot. Did I forget a slide? No, I did.
That's me in the pink shirt up there, by the way. I came to UUFR, I think in 2016, and I've always wanted to go deeper in this conversation about race, but in reality, I didn't know how to do it. I took classes, I read books, I participated in workshops, I even led a few workshops. And much to my surprise, I was able to have these conversations, begin to have these conversations. And that is the thing that has been inspiring me to continue to do the work that you see the committee and others doing here at UUFR. And for me, it's not just an analytical thing. It's real work and real discussions happening with people. And that really, some people say that lights my fire, but that encourages me, and I continue to participate. And one of the outcomes that I'm witnessing firsthand is I'm hearing white people and people of color having these conversations between ourselves, and I want to have even more of this. I want to see us to go even deeper. And I think that this is just the start as well as a continuation of that process. And that is the thing that keeps me engaged in this work here at UUFR. So I think, Diane, you're next.
And I'm Diane Irwin. Beginning in 1987, I worked in the Wake County Public Schools in a public separate school for students with emotional behavioral disabilities. More than 90% of the students at our school with the most severe students with behavioral issues were African American, even though only about 30% of the students in Wake County schools at that time were African American. And our staff noted that the African American students mostly tended to be angry and paranoid, while the white students truly had severe mental health issues. Although I did not have the language of white supremacy and systemic racism at that time, it was apparent to me that something is deeply wrong with our society and our educational system. Although I did try to address this some in my professional life, especially once I worked at the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, I began to do anti-racism work at UUFR, as it seemed to be a place where I could make a difference. So that's why I do this work.
Hi, I'm Locke. Xin chào quý vị. I moved to Raleigh from California a little over a year ago, and I left behind my family and my home of 30 years. So when I joined UUFR, I joined not only for a community of faith, I joined in search of belonging. I don't know about you guys, but when I hop online or I read the news, I think it's very easy to feel discouraged by what I see as a lot of discord and division. But I believe that our differences, our diversity, can help make us stronger, more adaptable. And growing up, I didn't always see a lot of other Asian faces or many other LGBT queer voices. But I believe that representation matters. I believe that visibility matters. And so while I joined UUFR, not just to find a family of faith, I joined AIR because I wanted to build a home where we can celebrate and cultivate the differences that we share, because I believe where differences can divide, I believe that diversity can help unite us. Thank you.
I was just going to say, unlike Becky, and we respect your opinion, we do believe in clapping, so. Thank you so much to Dana and Lee, and Diane and Locke. I'm Jerry Meisner. We are doing the work, and the good news is we're off to a great start. There are many of us involved. The review of our policies and written documents revealed race-neutral language. We have no written barriers to multiculturalism and inclusion. We are deepening our conversations about race, which is very important. We are joining community partnerships like One Wake, many others. And I wanted to pause now and just say special thanks to the board, to Reverend James and to Reverend Sasha, and to the staff, and to all of you for your support and excitement. It's been very important. Thank you. And now, to realize our vision of being a welcoming and inclusive community and to become a force of change in the community, here's what we need to do, and we need you. Please read the AIR report, and there is a 20-page section that is a summary of our findings and with recommendations that you can read, as well as the data for those who love it. And it's available. We had the information earlier, but it's available online, and there's a link in the last two chalices. We have lots of comments in that were shared in the rubric session, so I think that's very important. If you are new to UFR in the last couple of years, you haven't missed out. There will be many opportunities for you to join the discussions, to share your passions, and to get involved in the action. Everyone is invited to, this is when I need a slide. Can he do that?
Next slide. You have to push it.
There it is. Good. These are our open discussions that you're invited to. Here's the dates of the first round of them. You'll be able to ask questions and share your comments as we reflect on what we have learned and where we want to go. We would like to urge everyone who hasn't, and probably everybody here has, to take Living the Pledge to End Racism. And there's a growing awareness of what we need to do to achieve anti-racism and to dismantle the power structures that create and perpetuate privilege and discrimination in our society. So let's go. We need to hear from you. AIR is, and please stand, Jenny Almeida, Locked In, Diane Irwin, Dana Maddox, John McLean, Jerry Meisner, Lee Tate, Bonnie Tilson, and our terrific board liaison, Jessica Godrow. Thank you. Thank you. Please contact or chat with us anytime about what you are excited about. So, come join us. Let's reflect on what we've learned, dream together, and get busy. Come join us. What do you want to do to work with us to take UFR to the next level? Come join us. Let's be the change we want to see in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana, Lee, Diane, Locke, and Jerry. Our second presentation will be from our Strategic Planning Task Force.
Oh, yes.
Good. And Sandy Pierce serves as chair. Please welcome Sandy.
Oh, yay, go ahead, clap. Good afternoon. So I wanted first to thank the members of the strategic planning team. We started meeting together this January, and these are pictures of our team, Gisela Fleming, Russ Altcott, Jock Roth, Phoenicia Schwidway, Allison Hurwitz, and Laura Dupre. And our membership includes established members, midterm members, and new members. So it has been a fun group to work with. So step into the future with me for just a short while and think about who UUFR is called to be in the next chapter of our congregational life. I'm excited to update you about where we are in this process and invite you to be involved in the rest of the activities that we're scheduling. Let's see if I can do this. Yes. So our theme of our strategic plan is moving forward together. I love this picture that I found on the web of a chalice with the members that are diverse holding the chalice up, because to me that embodies the theme that we want to have, which is moving forward together. The board of directors started this process in November of 2021, and they went through a discernment phase of gathering information, data, looking at what other churches were doing in North Carolina and in other parts of the country. And we even visited some of those churches to talk to them about their strategic plans and what they were doing. We also asked the board's Committee on Ministry to conduct loop groups to gather input from the congregation about where they thought UFR needed to go. That committee facilitated 9 sessions with 79 congregants and summarized over 400 comments in a report that they sent to the board. So I want to recognize those members of the Committee on Ministry. Nancy Stone is co-chair, Billy Lyles is co-chair, Irene Seigan, Rachel Wellens, and Donna Kripapori. Since January, the strategic planning team has been creating a draft strategic plan for discussion by the congregation. And we came to consensus earlier this month on a draft strategic plan, 2-page concise plan. And we are going to be offering conversations to talk in detail about the plan. You've participated in loop groups to give us input so that we could develop a draft plan, and now we need for you to say, yeah, you got it right, or you left something out. Too far. we go. So today, I'm just going to pique your interest in coming to these conversations, to throw out the highest level of the draft plan. I love this vision. It took all of us to create it, and this is what the vision is of what our plan is supposed to do. UUFR aspires to be a loving community that is intentionally inclusive, spiritually nourishing, and committed to leading social justice change. Sound like Becky's sermon this morning? Why do people come to UUFR? I think these are reasons that we all come to UUFR. We developed 5 high-level goals: be welcoming to all who seek a liberal religious community, inspire our spirits, nurture connections at all stages of life, champion social justice at UUFR and in our wider community, and create a vibrant campus and staff infrastructure at UUFR. We included the recommendations from the AIR Committee in some of our goals, objectives, and strategies. So this will be important when you're reading through that. You'll see some of the things from that report. So now we're moving into action. We want to talk with you about the details of this plan, the strategies, and the objectives. We want you to sign up for a conversation. They won't be long meetings, but we will be talking amongst ourselves about if these objectives and strategies are meaningful, and if there's anything that isn't in there. This is just the first draft of the plan. After this, we will take recommendations and modify it. Then we'll come back to you in the fall and have a town hall. And then the congregation will vote on this plan in December at a congregational meeting, so that it is really your plan. So I'm hoping to see you at some of these conversations. Please talk it up to your friends so that we have good attendance. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Our last presentation today will be from our Bylaws Task Force. Jim Yoakum serves as chair. Please welcome Jim.
Bylaws, uh-oh. I've already asked Louis to lock the doors. All right, we never know what attendance is going to be like at these things, so I've got 25 printouts, and so I'm going to spread these around. I ask you to cuddle up with somebody so that you can see what's on these. All right, so who is on the Bylaws Task Force? That's a good question. Me, Becky Elliott, Mary Kay Fruga, and Chris Wise. Paul Boucher was also on the task force for a brief while, but after our second argument about the Oxford comma, he fled. I have to say, not much gets past this group, and it has been an honor and a joy in the last year to work with this group. The board gave this task force a pretty clear directive when it was assembled early last year to focus on a finite number of things to get our bylaws at least up to date. Bylaws are always works in progress. Chris Wise likes to say bylaws always reflect the reality of the last 6 months, and that's about it. So what I'm going to do today is just cover some of the big changes. I'm not going to read things in excruciating detail to you. I'm hoping to make space for a little bit of discussion. I don't know if you want to do that after everybody's had opened it up for questions in general, or yeah.
Or you can do it in your time.
Okay, we'll do it in our time and invite some discussion. So what did the board ask the Bylaws Committee to do? Well, some cleanup. some slightly outdated language, some inconsistent language here and there, commas, things like that. We had a listening session last fall just to do that, and that seemed to go very well. Some other things the committee said no to. This was a very strange experience on my part, because I was on the board at the time, and I got to be on the board telling the committee what to do. And then I was on the committee, and the committee said no, and then I went back to the board, and I told that what to do. And my husband was actually delighted for two reasons. One, this kind of self-arguing convinced him that Unitarian Universalism was perfect for me. And second, public witness about what I am like when I disagree with myself and contradict myself was the greatest gift he could get. The board asked us to find an alternative to Robert's Rules of Order. The committee convinced me that was insane. The board suggested that we revise our language about how foundation bequests were handled at one of the listening sessions. You guys convinced us that was insane. And so the board was told no. So what did the Bylaws Committee do? In addition to cleanup and consistency, which I can very briefly run through, but it's fairly straightforward, there were two main things that are reflected in these bylaws that are new. Okay? One, how statements of conscience are handled in this congregation. Statements of conscience under our current bylaws are handled basically requiring a congregational vote to approve them. And that's not bad in theory, but it's problematic in practice because we only have a couple congregation meetings a year, and we're big and clunky. And we get approached for the congregation to lend its name to some cause or program publicly, and our usual response is, we'll get back to you. And then 6, 9, 11 months go by. And so one of the things we did as a committee was try to come up with a new proposal. And here's the gist of it. The board gets to sign off on using the congregation's name for some program, public purpose, some coalition or something like that, saying UUFR endorses this or is part of this, whatever. However, the congregation, A, needs to be able to weigh in some meaningful fashion. Typically, that would be a town hall kind of thing, which doesn't have all of the massive overhead of organizing a congregational meeting with all the legal notices and blah, blah, blah. And second, that our board meetings are currently open, but that when the board is making this decision about the statement of conscience, people are notified in advance of the particular language and are free to come to the board meeting. And third, a supermajority of the board is required to pass a statement of conscience. And the thinking is that this will give the congregation enough of a way to have input and feedback and have a feeling of some stakes involved without slowing us down and getting burdened in bureaucracy. At our listening session earlier this year, that was received fairly well. So that is currently one of the major proposals. The second one is bigger, and I have to give special thanks to Mary Kay Fruga for really starting this ball rolling several years ago. This is about how ministers are selected in this congregation. This congregation has not had a meaningful role in selecting a lead minister in a long, long time. And part of that is just due to the fact that minister designations have changed and evolved from the UUA since the bylaws were last amended. And part of it comes from some weirdness and ambiguities and silences in the current bylaws about the process of choosing ministers. So, what the new proposed bylaw changes involve is giving the congregation a much clearer, more direct role in choosing lead ministers. There's a lot of moving parts there. I'm not going to go through them in excruciating detail, but I will be happy to answer questions you might have about this. One thing that the Bylaws Committee did not take on was a larger issue about some of the foundations of power in the congregation. I was a nonprofit lawyer for a long time, and I like to think about the power in a nonprofit corporation this way. There's the law, and you got to do what the law says. Nestled within the law are articles of incorporation. Articles of incorporation have to do what the law says. Okay. But usually these are pretty skeletal, and last December, actually, this congregation voted to update its massively 50 years outdated Articles of Incorporation. Nestled within the Articles of Incorporation are bylaws. And bylaws have to agree with the law, and they have to agree with the Articles of Incorporation. And that's what we're updating. Well, I shouldn't say the law is sparse, because it's definitely not. But the articles and the bylaws generally are not very meaty documents. They just kind of sketch the outlines of how things are supposed to work. In the center, the fourth ring is policies and procedures. Living, breathing documents that the board promulgates. And we went through a massive revision last year, and more as always. There's always policy revision going on. So who has the ultimate power in a congregation? Well, the law, the articles, the bylaws, and the policies say so. Okay? And the law puts some defaults in place. And by default, in a nonprofit corporation, the board has power. All of the power. Except that members get to vote on a very narrowly circumscribed set of things. Okay? They get to choose the directors. There's stuff like mergers and bylaws amendments. The law usually has something to say about that. Okay? But that's it. The rest of it's for the board. And this is how for-profit corporations work as well. Okay. One of the things the board did not ask the committee to touch was whether we want to rebalance or revisit some of that power distribution. And in particular, this congregation has in the past, in congregational meetings, voted for some stuff that wasn't specified in the bylaws. Bylaws specify the congregation needs to approve meeting minutes, the bylaws need to do a few other, or the board needs to do this, the congregation gets to approve that. But what about stuff that just kind of sua sponte the congregation at a congregational meeting adds? We'd like this, we want this. Well, what's the legal theory? What's the theory for that being a power that the congregation has when the board by default has power? So I talked about this with Laura and Michelle. It was like a year and a half ago or something, right? We talked about, this is a sticky issue. What do we want to do with this? And we felt like there was a lot of other fish to fry at the time. And so that just simply has not been on the agenda. Nevertheless, I think it is worth keeping in mind and perhaps discussing further if we want to do something about that now, or if not, what the path forward on that would actually look like. How would we rebalance power? How would we solidify our understandings of how power is divided in this congregation? Along those lines, first of all, let me ask, am I forgetting anything, Becky? Huh? After today? Oh, okay. Well, if you want to talk about this further, what we'll do is we'll let everything else wind down and we'll stay for conversation. I actually have a hard stop at 1:15, but we are happy to listen to other conversations about, other comments, questions about the bylaws. And I understand that the microphone is going to go away at 1 o'clock. Microphone will go away at 1 o'clock. Anyway, sorry, I babbled a little bit today. It's the end of the semester. Sorry about it, but I hope you'll cut me some slack. So actually, there are some important conversations about the bylaws that we can have after we wind the rest of this up. Is that all right? Is that okay? Yes. Did we do it? Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Jim. I don't know if we have anyone that has questions for any of the three groups that have spoken. We were not expecting a lot of questions, but I wanted to keep that open. And so Jim Hurtis has a question. Is it on bylaws or is it? Okay, I don't know if, would you want to wait and do it in the listening session, or do you want to ask your question now? Okay, yeah, please come up. And Jim, I don't know if you might want to come back up to answer his question. We can just, it should be. Zane, is the microphone here on? Thank you.
Okay, Jim Hurtis. My one issue on the bylaws is pretty much what Jim has covered, is that some of the congregation votes that we've taken for decades, I've been here 40 years, and all of us have been told our vote directs the board and staff on what to do. No, the law says that's not true. And I have proposed that that be changed now, not wait for another discussion. As what was presented on our new vision, our vote wouldn't count as the bylaws are currently standing. The board could choose to reject our opinion. So I feel that that statement should be included now on what the congregation's powers are. I have proposed to the bylaws team a list of about 6 items that the congregation has the power to vote on, and it is binding upon the board and the lead minister or staff, and only the exception is when the board tells us our vote is for the opinion to guide the board. And I think it's extremely important that we make that change now. It's not a transition issue. It's correcting an oversight or an omission that has been going on forever. Between 1985 and 1998, I counted 19 votes of this congregation that we voted on that the board followed. And those 19 votes would not be necessary. We voted to call an interim minister, just to contract with an interim minister. We voted to change the name, to name the rooms in Peace Hall after notable UUs. That's been removed, but I've sent a document to the team, and I'm sure if you ask them, they will forward to you this list that I've done from my research. This is not a transition issue. It's just an oversight that needs to be corrected, and now is the time to do it, not the next bylaws round. I've been involved in that a couple of times myself. So I want to get it done now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I would like to respond to that with an expression of gratitude to Jim. Jim had the courage to dig into boxes and boxes and boxes of old meeting minutes, digging up exactly what the congregation had voted on, when and where. He's been clear and consistent in communicating with me about his findings and his concerns. This, from my point of view, has been, it gets to a separation of powers and a clear pinning down of where the powers reside, and it is not fundamentally a bylaws issue. My suggestion has been that that conversation about reshifting that power is something that needs congregational-wide intentional discussion, skilled attorney drafting, because my suspicion is, although I am not giving anyone legal advice here, is that this is actually an Articles of Incorporation issue at minimum, okay? And that we should not be tinkering with powers we do not understand. So I would be very eager to kind of prompt the board to be more intentional about this conversation. I actually think that there are different ways to approach this rather than what Jim has proposed. Nevertheless, I suspect, Jim, you're going to bring this up at the congregational meeting. That's your intention, right? So this is something that we need to be aware of so that no one's blindsided in the congregational meeting in June where this is coming from. The Bylaws Committee has presented this draft that you have, and Jim Hurtis will be presenting some additional language, and if it is to address the concern that he raised. Does that make sense? And I also forgot to mention the amendment, the revisions that I handed out, they are available online through our members' drive. And to convince everybody that we were trying to disrupt as little as possible and be consistent, we made sure that the links in the chalice did not work. That's the only way we could convince you that we were not trying to usher in a sea change. Anyway, so Jim, does that discussion kind of address your concern for now? And email Jim, email me, email anyone on the committee. We'll make sure you get a copy of Jim's comments.
Thank you, Jim Yoakum, and thank you, Jim Hurtis. And I think that concludes our meeting for today. Thank you all for attending. I should have asked for more questions. It didn't seem like anybody else had questions.
There wasn't like a cast of characters. Nobody, if anybody had any urgent things. So, good job.
Yeah, good, thanks. Thanks. I need to get better at getting out of my notes, but other than that, yeah.
Give yourself some grace. You did good.
Thanks. Thanks. Okay, Becky, thank you.
Oh, and that service today
It was
was.
beautiful.
Why aren't you a minister?
Yeah, it really
Really,
was
why aren't you a
just-
minister?
Yeah, I'm 70 years old.
Why weren't you a minister before you were 70 years old? Well, anyway.
I'm going to take this back to
Okay. Well, anyway. What is that? Oh, don't leave your stuff. No, I mean, you really do have a gift, though. You really do.
Let's just remind people that
Oh.
it's still live. If anyone wants to talk about bylaws, please come up front. Let's do that. Well, I brought my computer to take notes.
I think Jim's input was the most. I think we should probably post Jim's suggestion.